on the endless highways of America, where strangers cross paths for just a moment. A story began that no one could have predicted. A woman standing alone, a passing car, and encounters that would end in tragedy. This is not just a story about crime. It's a story about pain, survival, and a life shaped by darkness long before the headlines began. Aileen Wuornos was born in 1956 in Michigan, into a life already filled with instability. Her father, Leo Dale Pittman, was a violent man with a criminal past. He was convicted of serious crimes and spent time in prison before ending his life while incarcerated. Aileen never truly knew him. Her mother abandoned her and her brother when they were still children, leaving them to be raised by their grandparents. At first, this may have seemed like a second chance, but it quickly became something else. Her grandfather was described as strict, unpredictable, and often violent. Aileen later claimed he physically abused her and even sexually assaulted her. While these claims were never fully proven, what is clear is this: her childhood was far from safe. She grew up in fear, confusion, and emotional neglect. At just 13 years old, she became pregnant after a traumatic experience involving someone around her. The child was later placed for adoption. Instead of receiving support, she was pushed further away. She eventually dropped out of school, and from that point on, her life began to spiral. Her behavior became more difficult and defiant, and in time, her grandparents forced her out of the house. School ended, childhood ended, and survival became everything. By the age of 14, Aileen was already living a life far beyond her years. In order to survive, she relied on perversity to get small amounts of money, food, or cigarettes. Still just a teenager with nowhere to go, Aileen was completely on her own. She moved from place to place, living on the streets, relying on hitchhiking, harlotry, temporary work, and risky choices. Over time, something inside her began to change. The world she experienced was harsh, and the people she encountered were not always kind. Aileen developed a deep anger, especially toward men. Whether that anger came from fear, past experiences, or repeated harm, it became a defining part of who she was. Before the crimes, before the headlines, there was a brief moment where Aileen's life seemed like it might take a different path. In her early 20s, Aileen Wuornos married a wealthy older man named Louis Fell, a yacht club president in Florida. At first, it appeared to be a chance for stability, a life far removed from the chaos she had known. But that stability didn't last. The marriage quickly became troubled. Reports described constant arguments, heavy drinking, and violent confrontations. Aileen's behavior grew increasingly unpredictable, and there were multiple incidents involving aggression. Eventually, the situation escalated to the point where her husband sought legal protection against her. The marriage ended in divorce after only a short time. For Aileen, it was another failed attempt at a normal life. Another door closed, and once again she found herself back where she had always been, alone, unstable, and searching for a way to survive. In the late 1980s, Aileen met a woman named Tyria Moore. This relationship became one of the most important parts of her life. For the first time, Aileen seemed to find emotional attachment and a sense of belonging. Some believe that Aileen chose to be with a woman not only because of attraction, but also because of her growing distrust and fear of men. Their relationship quickly became intense. It wasn't just emotional. Tyria began to rely on Aileen for financial support, placing even more pressure on an already fragile life.
Getting a real problem, and our rent was due, $1,200 behind. But Tyra was doing a lot of beer drinking and stuff. She wanted to go out all the time, so she was burning up the money I was making.
Their relationship gave her comfort, but it didn't fix her life. In fact, it added pressure. Aileen continued working as a prostitute to support both of them, and soon, everything would escalate. Between 1989 and 1990, a series of killings began to unfold across the highways of Florida. The victims were all men, most of them middle-aged, found near remote roads. Their last known contact, a woman hitchhiking alone, Aileen Wuornos. After her arrest, Aileen admitted to the killings, but her explanation was complex. She claimed that the first victim had tried to assault her and that she acted in self-defense. From that moment on, she described living in constant fear during her encounters on the road. However, the pattern continued. More men were killed, and after each incident, Aileen took personal belongings from the victims, including money, vehicles, and items she later used or sold. Investigators concluded that these acts were not isolated reactions but part of a repeated pattern involving robbery. So the question became unavoidable. Was she acting out of fear and survival? Or had survival turned into something more deliberate? The truth, even today, remains deeply debated.
We have evil in us, all of us do. And my evil would just happen to come out because of the circumstances of what I was doing. Hitchhiking, hooking, on the road. I was a homeless person all my life.
Eventually, the evidence began to point toward her. Through witness accounts, fingerprints, and items linked to the victims, investigators closed in. In 1991, Aileen Wuornos was arrested. During interrogation, she showed a mix of emotions. At times calm, at times angry, at times completely unstable. She eventually confessed to the murders. But even then, her story shifted between self-defense and responsibility. Aileen Wuornos was put on trial in Florida. The court focused on the evidence, the number of victims, the pattern, and her confessions. She was convicted of multiple murders, and one by one she received death sentences. During the trial and after, her behavior became even more unpredictable. Sometimes she showed anger toward the court and society. Other times she appeared calm and accepting of her fate. At one point, she even asked to stop appeals, saying she wanted to come clean, take responsibility, and move on.
I have to come clean and cleanse my spirit in the name of Jesus Christ.
Experts have debated her mental state for years. Some believe she suffered from serious psychological disorders. Others believe she fully understood her actions. Her past, abuse, abandonment, trauma clearly shaped her. And this is where everything becomes unclear. Does a broken past explain or excuse such actions? In 2002, Aileen's story came to an end. She was executed by lethal injection. Aileen Wuornos was more than just a name in criminal history. She was a person shaped by pain, choices, and consequences. Her story ended, but the debate around her never did. How much does the past shape who we become? When does survival turn into something else? And where do we draw the line between victim and perpetrator? Some stories fade with time, but this one still haunts the roads where it all began.